President Trump rallied supporters in Dallas Thursday night. Upon landing in Texas, the president credited his threat of sanctions for the temporary ceasefire in Syria announced by Vice President Mike Pence earlier in the day. At the rally, the president lashed out at Democrats, specifically taking aim at House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
They say, let's see, what's another idea? What's another idea? How do we win this election? You know, I really don't believe anymore that they love our country. I don't believe it. Crazy Nancy. Think of that.
Paula Reid is traveling with the president and filed this report from Dallas.
Here in Dallas, the president mostly stuck to the usual themes of his campaign, but since he's in Texas, he kicked off the night talking about the importance of religious rights and gun rights before pivoting to attacks on his Democratic rivals. Now, this crowd was fired up. Thousands of people here remained on their feet through the approximately 90-minute speech. Now, it's interesting, the president did take some shots at his political rival, former Vice President Joe Biden, calling him, quote, Sleepy Joe, and once again making unsubstantiated claims about his son, Hunter Biden. It's especially interesting that the president brought that up today because earlier his chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, announced that the president will be holding the G7 next year at his own Doral resort. That has raised questions about self-dealing and whether the president should be in any way profiting from an event like the G7. But the president made no mention of that while criticizing the Biden family for alleged nepotism and self-dealing. And the president also continued to brag about his deal with China. The administration has announced a phase one of the ongoing negotiations between the U.S. and China over trade, but nothing has actually been committed to paper. Now, the president continues to insist that this deal is great for the farmers, but negotiations continue. And so far, we really haven't seen any specific details about what exactly this deal includes. Well, one of the most prominent themes of the night was the president insisting that he wants to end the, quote, endless wars. This is particularly significant because over the past several days, the president has received a wave of bipartisan criticism for his decision to abruptly withdraw from northern Syria. But today, he continued to insist that the U.S. has spent, quote, $8 trillion in the Middle East. There was mass chaos and death, and that is something that he wants to put an end to. Now, currently, Vice President Mike Pence and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, they are over in Turkey right now. The president continued to insist that he had a big victory through these negotiations with a ceasefire, but it's our understanding that that ceasefire will only last about 120 hours. Now, tonight, there was no mention of the president's chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, who had a pretty controversial press conference earlier in the day where he appeared to confirm that, in fact, there was a quid pro quo between the Trump administration and Ukraine, with the president trying to pressure Ukraine to investigate his political rivals. Now, I've spoken to some sources on the president's legal team. They were caught by surprise by these claims. They said they had nothing to do with what Mick Mulvaney said. The president was asked earlier about Mick Mulvaney's press conference. He said he hadn't seen it and that he was overall happy with his performance. But it'll be interesting to see how the president reacts once he has a chance to watch that. But overall, Elaine, tonight, the president's supporters here in Dallas, they were enthusiastic. Most of them stayed throughout this pretty lengthy event tonight. And the president heads back to Washington, where he continues to face an impeachment inquiry, which he did bring up a few times tonight, but mostly just to disparage Democrats. Elaine?